Welcome to Daily Newscast. This is episode 4 for July 31st, 2025. This deep dive is designed especially for you, our intermediate and advanced English learners, folks who are eager to stay well informed on global events and, well, really enhance your language skills. Our conversation today, it's going to be natural, real. We'll focus on vocabulary that's accessible but also current. We'll speak at a pace that's maybe a little slower than you might hear in, say, a fast native conversation, but still completely natural for your listening practice, so you can listen along wherever you are. Maybe you're cooking, enjoying a walk, or focusing on your work. And remember, if the pace ever feels just a little too quick at any point, you can always try listening at 0.75 times speed in your player.
Absolutely. And today we're going to navigate, I think, a really fascinating landscape of news. We'll be covering everything from some groundbreaking technology shifts, global economic strategies, significant political moves, and even some crucial medical advancements. Our goal is really to pull out the most important insights, provide the context you need, and explore what these developments truly mean, both for you and, well, for the world around us.
Okay, let's kick off our deep dive today then. We'll start with a story from the technology world, one that took a very unexpected turn. You might remember back in 2023, there was huge buzz around a massive $20 billion acquisition, Adobe buying a company called Figma. But surprisingly, perhaps, that deal, it ultimately fell apart.
That's right. And the reasons why it collapsed are pretty significant, actually. They highlight a growing trend in global market oversight. The acquisition, yes, valued at that staggering $20 billion, it was abandoned. Why? Well, primarily due to intense pressure from regulators. Authorities in both the United States and Europe, they expressed some serious concerns. They worried the merger would significantly reduce competition in the creative software market.
Right, Adobe's already such a giant in that space.
Exactly. With things like Photoshop, Illustrator, they're dominant. And they were looking to integrate Figma's platform, which is known for its collaborative design features. Figma had, really quickly become a favorite for product designers, developers, because of those real-time collaboration tools. Was a strong challenge to Adobe's own offerings, like Adobe XD. So regulators feared that Adobe buying such a tough competitor would basically stifle innovation. It could raise prices, limit choices for consumers in design software. So this outcome, it really signals a new era, I think. Global authorities are becoming much more vigilant, actively scrutinizing these big tech mergers to ensure fair competition, prevent monopolies. They're pushing back against just letting tech giants consolidate unchecked.
Okay, so with that huge deal off the table, what did Figma do? What path did they take instead?
Well, they decided to forge their own way forward. They opted to go for an initial public offering, or IPO, basically to go public independently. And they're making their debut on the New York Stock Exchange literally today, July 31st, 2025. The ticker symbol is FBIG.
So that raises a really interesting question then. How strong is the market's appetite for Figma on its own?
It seems the answer is incredibly strong. I mean, the initial public offering, it was priced at $33 per share. That's significantly higher than the initial range they expected, which was, I think, $25 to $28.
Wow.
Yeah, the demand was so robust, they actually had to increase the price range twice during the process. First up to $30 to $32, and then finally settling at that $33 mark. This really strong demand meant the offering raised a substantial total of $1.2 billion for the company.
$1.2 billion, just like that.
And get this, reports indicated the initial public offering was oversubscribed nearly 40 times.
40 times.
40 times, meaning investors wanted to buy 40 times more shares than were actually available. Just for perspective, other popular listings like Circle, they were maybe oversubscribed around 20 times.
Okay, so 40 is huge.
It's a remarkable indicator of investor confidence, just real enthusiasm for Figma's future as an independent company. What's also quite interesting is how they did the IPO. They used an auction-like method.
How does that work differently?
Well, typically in a United States initial public offering, investment banks play a huge role in setting the price, allocating shares, often favoring, big institutional investors. This auction method, though, it allowed a broader range of investors, even individuals, to specify exactly how many shares they wanted and the maximum price they'd pay.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit like a Dutch auction. It can help find the true price more efficiently, especially for really sought-after companies. It potentially gets a fairer, maybe even higher initial price for Figma itself and lets more people participate.
All right, let's unpack this a bit for our listener. What exactly is Figma? What does the company do, and how are they doing financially, especially now they're entering the public market?
Okay, so at its core, Figma is described as a design and product development platform. But really, it's much more than just, say, a drawing tool. It's a comprehensive, collaborative space. Teams can come together in real time to create digital products, user experiences. Imagine, a team brainstorming a new app idea, then designing the whole interface, building prototypes that work, and finally getting those designs ready for developers to actually code.
Right.
Figma wants to be the single platform for all those steps, from the initial idea right through to the shipped product. And crucially, it's evolved beyond just design tools. It's now an artificial intelligence-powered platform.
Okay, how does the artificial intelligence fit in?
It uses artificial intelligence to, say, automate repetitive tasks, suggest design elements, maybe even help analyze user behavior from prototypes. The goal is to make the whole process more collaborative, definitely more efficient, and, they say, even more fun. And the user numbers are pretty impressive. As of the end of the first quarter this year, Figma had 13 million monthly active users.
13 million.
Yeah. And here's a key detail. 2/3 of those users, they're not full-time designers.
Interesting. So who are they?
Project managers, marketers, developers, other team members, anyone who needs to interact with design work. It shows its broad appeal, its user-friendliness goes way beyond just professional designers. It has really wide utility. Now, financially, well, that IPO valuation, $19.3 billion, is impressive, right?
Yeah.
It reflects that strong market confidence. But their prospectus, that's the detailed document companies release before an IPO, it shows a more complex financial picture.
Okay.
For the full year 2024, Figma reported revenues of $749 million, which is good. However, they also recorded a significant net loss, $730 million for that same period.
A loss almost as big as their revenue. Why?
Yeah, it's substantial. It was largely due to stock-based compensation expenses, nearly $900 million.
Ah, paying employees with stock.
Exactly. It's very common in tech, especially growth companies. They give employees stock or stock options as part of their pay package. It's an expense on the books, but it doesn't mean cash is flying out the door right away.
Yeah.
It helps attract and keep talent without burning through cash reserves.
Right, I understand.
Looking ahead, though, for the second quarter of this year, Figma provided some guidance. They expect revenues between $247 million and $250 million. That's strong year-over-year growth, like 39% to 41%, so it's still expanding rapidly. And they also guided for net income, ranging from a small loss of maybe $500,000 to a potential profit of $2.5 million.
Okay, so moving towards profitability then.
It indicates a potential path, yes.
Yeah.
A promising sign that as the business scales and maybe those initial high stock compensation charges normalize a bit,
Right.
They could achieve profitability.
So we've got this company, huge valuation, incredible demand from investors, but also these significant past losses, mainly from stock compensation. What really stands out to you about Figma's journey to the public market?
For me, it's absolutely how that regulatory oversight completely changed their strategic path. What was meant to be this massive acquisition just vanished, forcing them onto this independent public path instead.
Yeah, it's a major pivot.
It really is. And when you connect this to the bigger picture, Figma's unexpected IPO, it highlights this pivotal shift in the tech landscape. It shows that regulatory pressure isn't just, a roadblock for mega mergers. It's actively shaping the competitive environment itself.
How so?
Well, instead of letting a dominant player like Adobe just absorb a rising star, regulators effectively forced Figma to stay independent. This could potentially lead to a more diverse, maybe more robust tech ecosystem where smaller, innovative companies have to grow on their own merits, keep innovating aggressively to win market share rather than just getting bought out by the big guys.
Makes sense. More competition.
Hopefully. So for you, our listener, the key takeaway here, I think, is that in today's global economy, even the biggest tech giants face real antitrust scrutiny. And that can unexpectedly open up new paths for growth and competition for emerging companies, which ultimately could benefit all of us as consumers through more choices and continued innovation.
Okay, shifting gears now, let's talk about artificial intelligence, clearly a booming sector, right?
Yeah.
And how is its influence affecting global tech giants? Let's look at Samsung.
Indeed. The demand for artificial intelligence, it's just insatiable. It's a massive driver in the semiconductor industry, the chips that power everything. Samsung Electronics, obviously a powerhouse here, recently announced their preliminary earnings for the second quarter of 2025, and their operating profit, it came in at 4.68 trillion won. That's about 3.36 billion US dollars. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it was a significant drop, 55.2% compared to the same time last year.
Over half. That's a huge fall.
It is, and this decline was partly attributed, in their own words, to weak artificial intelligence chip sales, which is quite telling, isn't it? It shows how sensitive even giants like Samsung are to shifts in these really specific high-growth market segments.
So digging a bit deeper, what caused that weakness in AI chips for Samsung?
Well, their foundry business, that's the part that makes custom chips for other companies that remain particularly weak. And a big factor here was inventory value adjustments. These stemmed mainly from political sanctions imposed by the United States.
The export restrictions.
Exactly. Restrictions on exporting advanced artificial intelligence chips and the equipment needed to make them, especially to China. This shows the direct, immediate impact of geopolitics on corporate bottom lines and these complex global supply chains.
Yeah, you cut off a market like China, it's bound to have ripples.
Profound ripples. Reduced demand for those cutting-edge components hits the profitability of the manufacturers hard. However, Samsung is, of course, actively working to recover and adapt. They mentioned they're proactively addressing server demand by expanding sales of their high-bandwidth memory 3E products and high-density DDR5 products.
Okay, can you break those down? High-bandwidth memory 3E, or HBM 3E. It's a specialized type of memory. It's stacked, offering much higher bandwidth data transfer speed than traditional memory. Absolutely crucial for the massive data sets and complex calculations needed for modern artificial intelligence models, high-performance computing.
Got it. And DDR5. That's the fifth generation of double data rate synchronous dynamic random access memory. Basically, faster, more efficient, standard memory than previous generations, also vital for powerful servers and data centers. So by focusing on these cutting-edge products, Samsung is aiming for the highest performance, highest demand parts of the AI hardware market. They also reported a significant reduction in their NAND inventory. NAND is the flash memory in solid-state drives. Reducing that inventory suggests oversupply issues might be easing, maybe helped by delayed data center projects finally getting started again, so underlying demand might be recovering.
So they're hopeful for a rebound.
They are. Looking ahead, Samsung expects a recovery driven by AI orders. They anticipate a gradual rebound starting in the third quarter of 2025. It shows they believe the long-term AI trend will ultimately overcome these current geopolitical and market hurdles.
Right. It definitely seems that despite these current headwinds, these challenges, the long-term view for artificial intelligence chips is still incredibly strong. And we're seeing some major strategic partnerships forming in this critical area, aren't we?
Absolutely. We've seen several really big strategic moves. They really underscore how important, almost national security level, important AI chip manufacturing has become. For example, Tesla, the electric car and tech company, they signed a huge $16.5 billion deal with Samsung.
$16.5 billion.
Yeah, specifically for manufacturing artificial intelligence chips. This isn't just a big contract, it's a colossal commitment. It says a lot about Samsung's capabilities, obviously, but also about Tesla's aggressive push into AI for things like autonomous driving, robotics. And interestingly, Tesla's chief executive, Elon Musk, he even stated that Samsung agreed to let Tesla help maximize manufacturing efficiency. Musk himself apparently plans to be personally involved right there on the factory floor to speed things up.
Wow, that's unusual. Hands-on from the CEO.
Very. It highlights the strategic importance, the urgency, and just the immense investment needed to secure this cutting-edge AI chip production. And this trend of strategic investment, it goes right up to the national level, too. That recent trade deal between the United States and South Korea, which we'll touch on more, it includes a massive $350 billion investment pledge from South Korea into the United States.
$350 billion?
Yeah.
That's enormous.
It's huge, and it's strategically allocated. $200 billion is specifically for semiconductors, nuclear power, and biotechnology, all critical next-gen tech. Then another $150 billion is specifically for revitalizing United States shipbuilding. This investment directly targets technologies like advanced artificial intelligence processors. The aim is joint ventures, collaborative projects between U.S. and South Korean firms.
And this fits with the U.S. government's goals.
Perfectly. It aligns with the U.S. goal to reduce reliance on chip production from certain areas, diversify those critical supply chains, enhance national security, economic resilience. It makes AI chips not just a commercial product, but a really critical piece in this global strategic realignment. It's about self-sufficiency and trusted partnerships in vital tech areas.
So artificial intelligence chips are clearly right at the center of corporate earnings, international strategy. What really stands out to you, for our listener, about this global competition and sometimes surprising collaboration in AI?
What strikes me most is the profound dual nature of AI in global strategy. It's simultaneously this area of fierce, intense competition, but also a powerful driver of absolutely necessary collaboration.
Oh, so?
Well, on one hand, you have the U.S. imposing sanctions that directly hit Samsung's AI chip sales to China. That's the geopolitical struggle for tech supremacy right there. Nations are actively fighting for control over this foundational technology. It's seen as essential for future economic power, national security. In some ways, it's a zero-sum game.
But on the other hand,
you see these massive cross-border investments and partnerships, like the huge Tesla-Samsung deal, or South Korea's enormous $350 billion pledge to the U.S. This shows that despite the rivalries, the sheer complexity, the incredible cost, the specialized expertise needed for AI chip manufacturing, it demands significant international cooperation. No single nation, no single company has all the resources or capabilities to go it completely alone.
That's a key point.
Yeah. So for you, our listener, the takeaway is that the future of AI won't just be shaped by the speed of tech breakthroughs. It'll be shaped by this delicate, constantly shifting balance between nationalistic protectionism and crucial international cooperation. And that dynamic interplay will really define who leads the AI race.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit now and look at the bigger picture of the South Korean economy. It's globally known for its, incredible and rapid growth over the last few decades.
That's absolutely right. South Korea has developed into a highly sophisticated mixed economy. It's a remarkable transformation. As of 2025, it's the 13th largest economy in the world by nominal gross domestic product, estimated around $1.79 trillion. And its rapid development, going from an underdeveloped, war-torn nation to a high-income, tech-advanced country in just a few decades. That's famously called the Miracle on the Han River.
How did that happen?
It began back in the 1960s. Involved a strategic, aggressive, export-focused industrialization policy, first focusing on labor-intensive goods, then strategically shifting to high-tech industries, electronics, cars, semiconductors, areas where they are now world leaders. That foresight, combined with high domestic savings, strong government support, a highly educated workforce, it allowed them to break the $1 trillion gross domestic product mark in the early 2000s and join groups like the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the Group of 20.
And it's known for being resilient too, right?
Very much so. Particularly notable for its resilience against various global economic crises. The International Monetary Fund often highlights South Korea's relatively low state debt and its significant fiscal reserves, money they can quickly mobilize during financial emergencies, giving them a strong buffer against external shocks. This was really clear during the Great Recession of 2008-2009. While most developed countries fell into recession, South Korea was one of the very few that avoided it completely. They posted positive growth in both 2008 and 2009, then had a strong rebound to 6.2% growth in 2010.
That's impressive.
It really earned them a reputation for stability and adaptability. However, like many advanced economies, South Korea does face some significant long-term challenges. One of the most critical is its declining and rapidly aging population. Their fertility rate is among the lowest in the world. This demographic shift raises serious concerns about, the future labor force, potentially shrinking consumer demand, and definitely increasing pressure on social welfare systems. Also, its forecasted debt-to-gross domestic product ratio for 2024 was around 47.4%. Now, that's still manageable compared to many other developed nations, but something to watch carefully as the population ages and needs more public support.
Okay, so connecting this back to the present day.
Yeah.
How are things looking right now for South Korean businesses, especially a giant like Samsung, which we were just discussing?
Right. So, to reiterate and maybe expand a bit, Samsung Electronics' preliminary earnings for Q2 2025, they painted that mixed, somewhat challenging picture. It reflects both sector-specific issues and those broader global economic conditions. While total sales were up slightly, about 0.67%, reaching roughly $53.6 billion US dollars, their operating profit took that sharp 55.2% dive year over year. Net income also dropped 48%. And these figures mostly fell short of what the market expected. Analysts thought they'd do better.
And the breakdown showed issues in semiconductors.
Yes, their key semiconductor division, Device Solutions, posted sales of about 27.9 trillion won, but only 400 billion won in operating profit. That's its lowest operating profit since a loss back in late 2023. And this weak profitability was hit hard by two things: those inventory-related charges, write-downs on chip values, and the ongoing U.S. sanctions affecting the non-memory business, especially those advanced AI chips for the Chinese market. These external pressures hit a traditionally high-margin segment hard.
What about their phones and TVs?
Their mobile and consumer electronics side, the Device Experience division, also faced headwinds. Revenue was 43.6 trillion won, operating profit 3.3 trillion won. They attributed the decline to lower sales of their flagship Galaxy S25 smartphone, suggesting maybe softer consumer demand or just tougher competition, and also intensified competition in the global TV market. Despite all this, Samsung does forecast that gradual rebound in Q3 2025. They expect some one-off costs to fade. But they admit lingering tariff uncertainties and the global economic slowdown are still real challenges that could affect how strong that rebound is.
This leads us to a critical question then. How do these broader trade dynamics, especially new agreements, play out for South Korea's economic future?
A truly crucial development, offering both immediate relief and a clear new strategic direction, is that last-minute trade deal they managed to strike with the United States just on Thursday, July 31st.
The one that averted higher tariffs.
Exactly. Hugely significant. It caps a potentially devastating looming blanket tariff at 15%, successfully avoiding a much steeper 25% rate that was about to hit. This gives South Korean exporters a vital level of certainty, predictability, which is crucial for business planning, supply chains, investment. Without it, many South Korean goods would have faced much higher costs entering the U.S. market.
And the investment pledge was part of this deal.
Yes, a key foundational component. South Korea's massive pledge to invest $350 billion in the United States, and it's strategically targeted to benefit both sides. $200 billion for semiconductors, nuclear power, biotech, critical future industries, another $150 billion specifically for U.S. shipbuilding revitalization. This creates huge opportunities for joint ventures, deep partnerships between U.S. and South Korean firms. It aligns perfectly with U.S. goals of diversifying supply chains, strengthening key domestic industries. We're already seeing, for example, South Korean shipbuilders investing in U.S. shipyards. That's a direct, tangible result.
So it fosters deeper integration.
Exactly. Deeper economic integration, shared strategic interests, especially in those really advanced tech and critical infrastructure areas. On a slightly separate financial note, though, the inclusion of South Korean government bonds into the big World Government Bond Index, that was postponed.
Postponed.
From when to when?
From November this year to April next year. Being in that index usually attracts a lot of foreign investment into a country's bonds, lowers borrowing costs, increases liquidity. So the postponement means a delay in South Korea getting that boost in international capital flow and financial market recognition. It's not directly tied to the trade deal, but it's part of their broader financial integration picture.
Okay, so definitely a mixed bag for South Korea. Navigating these complex global shifts, forging vital new partnerships, while also dealing with internal challenges like demographics. What's the key takeaway for you, our listener, about South Korea's economic standing and its future path? What consistently stands out to me is South Korea's remarkable strategic adaptability and foresight. Despite facing clear short-term pressures like weaker AI chip sales, the impact of sanctions they're proactively maneuvering to solidify their long-term position. They're doing it through these massive strategic investments and significant trade deals. That $350 billion pledge to the U.S., it isn't just about dodging tariffs. It's a deeply strategic move to embed themselves even deeper into critical global supply chains for chips, nuclear power, ships.
So they see partnership as key.
Clearly, it highlights their understanding that future economic growth isn't just about domestic innovation. It's critically about forging strong, diverse, trusted international partnerships. Especially now, in an era of rising geopolitical tension and vulnerable supply chains. So for you, our listener, this means South Korea remains a pivotal player. They're showing how a nation can pivot, adapt its economic strategy to not just survive, but hopefully thrive in this complex, interconnected global economy.
All right, let's shift our focus now over to North America. Trade tensions there are also making major headlines, particularly between two very close neighbors, the United States and Canada. It feels like a constantly evolving, sometimes quite tense situation.
Indeed. Their long-standing, usually pretty harmonious trade relationship, it's been marked by escalating, often retaliatory tariffs through 2025. The United States, under the Trump administration, initially put 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum imports, citing national security reasons. There was even a threat from the administration to hike that tariff up to 50%, though fortunately that specific escalation hasn't happened. Still, these actions show a clear intent to use tariffs as a powerful lever to force changes in trade practices.
And Canada pushed back.
They did. In direct response, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Canada would match the U.S. 25% tariffs, specifically on auto imports from the United States. A clear, direct, symmetrical retaliation aimed at leveling the field and protecting Canada's absolutely crucial auto industry, which is deeply integrated with the U.S. market. We also saw an interesting, though temporary, move when the province of Ontario imposed a 25% tariff on electricity exported to the U.S. That was part of the broader dispute, but that specific measure got suspended after direct talks between Ontario Premier Doug Ford and the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. So some de-escalation is possible through dialogue.
But the broader tensions remain.
Yes. Beyond those specific retaliations, President Trump also introduced a wider 25% tariff on all foreign-made cars and a baseline 10% tariff on all imports generally, with Canada facing specific measures within that. And he set that explicit August 1st deadline for Canada to reach a new trade deal. The threat, imposing a much higher 35% tariff on Canadian goods not already covered by the existing United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or CUSMA.
And the justification for that 35% was unusual.
Very. What's particularly noteworthy is that this 35% rate would apparently apply even to Canadian exports already being hit with the 25% tariff. And Trump cited emergency powers related to a supposed national security threat from fentanyl trafficking. Linking drug trafficking to trade tariffs under national security is, well, it's a novel and controversial approach.
Has there been pushback within the U.S.?
Yes, significantly. A bipartisan group of senators has actively worked to try and revoke Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods. They're highlighting deep concerns about the negative economic impact on their own country, raising costs for U.S. manufacturers and consumers. And these actions, both the tariffs and the responses, they've even sparked calls in Canada and elsewhere for boycotts of American goods. It shows a broader frustration that can spill over into consumer behavior.
Okay, so given all this back and forth, What does it really mean for the overall trade relationship between these two economies that are so closely linked? And that trade imbalance that often gets mentioned, is it necessarily a problem? Let's try to unpack this.
That's an excellent question, and it really is a nuanced issue. The whole idea of a trade imbalance isn't always as straightforward or as negative as it might sound. Yes, in both 2023 and 2024, the United States imported more from Canada than it exported. That resulted in a trade deficit. For instance, in 2024, U.S. exports to Canada were about $349.4 billion. Imports from Canada hit $412.7 billion, so a deficit of about $63.3 billion. A big chunk of that imbalance comes from the U.S. importing significant energy products from Canada, crude oil, natural gas, which are vital inputs for U.S. industries and consumers.
So the deficit isn't automatically bad.
Not necessarily, no. It's crucial to understand these economies are profoundly interconnected. Many Canadian exports, like auto parts, energy products, raw materials, aren't just final goods. They're essential inputs for American industries. This deep integration actually supports jobs and economic activity on both sides of the border. Those Canadian imports allow U.S. manufacturers to produce goods more efficiently, maybe at lower costs, boosting their global competitiveness.
And what about services?
Right. While there might be a deficit in goods trade, the United States often runs a surplus in services trade with Canada. That helps offset the overall imbalance and gives a more complete picture. Plus, sometimes a trade deficit can simply reflect strong consumer demand and healthy economic growth in a country. It means the economy is strong enough to buy more from abroad.
How does the trade agreement, CUSMA, fit in? Is it working as intended?
Well, agreements like the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, CUSMA, they are fundamentally designed to be mutually beneficial, though, of course, the specific impacts can vary by sector. For the U.S., the deal included things that benefit American farmers, especially gaining more access to Canada's previously protected dairy market. It also strengthened rules of origin for cars, encouraging more North American content. For Canada, CUSMA ensures stable, preferential access to its biggest trading partner, the U.S., which is absolutely vital for their export-driven economy. And it preserved dispute resolution mechanisms that Canada values for handling trade disagreements fairly.
And travel's a big factor, too.
Huge. Beyond goods and services, cross-border travel represents significant economic activity and cultural exchange. In 2024, U.S. residents made over 23 million trips to Canada. Canadians took a remarkable 39 million trips to the U.S.
Dang.
Just hypothetically, if Canadian travel to the U.S. dropped by just 10%, that could mean an estimated $2.1 billion in lost spending for the U.S. economy. It really highlights the economic clout of cross-border tourism and how strained relations can ripple through many sectors.
So trade is clearly this constant negotiation with these deep, intricate economic ties always in the balance. What particularly stands out to you for our listener about these Canada-U.S. trade dynamics? For me, it's just how deeply interwoven they are, making broad tariffs seem like a real double-edged sword.
Yeah, when you connect this to the bigger picture, what truly stands out is that profound, often underappreciated interdependence between the U.S. and Canada. It fundamentally complicates any simple application of tariffs or trade barriers. It's not just two separate nations trading goods back and forth. It's more like an integrated economic ecosystem. Disruptions in one area, like tariffs on steel, they inevitably ripple through the other, affecting industries, jobs, consumers on both sides.
So tariffs can backfire.
Absolutely. The fact that so many Canadian exports are vital inputs for U.S. industries means tariffs, which might be intended to protect, can inadvertently harm U.S. manufacturers by raising their costs or messing up their supply chains. It's a really complex dance where economic logic often clashes directly with political rhetoric. And this persistent back and forth on tariffs, coupled with these broader, sometimes unprecedented threats, it highlights that even long-standing, deeply allied nations can get tangled in intense trade disputes. So for you, our listener, the key takeaway is that these dynamics show the inherent limits of economic nationalism when supply chains and industries are so deeply woven together. It also emphasizes how critical it is to understand the full economic picture: trade in services, cross-border investments, integrated industries, rather than just focusing on a simplified goods deficit.
Okay, now let's shift gears dramatically. We're moving to a significant political development, far from traditional trade talks, but with truly global implications. The United States has imposed new sanctions on a prominent Brazilian official.
That's correct. On July 30th, 2025, the United States Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, often called OFAC, made a significant announcement. They imposed sanctions against Brazilian Supreme Federal Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. This action was taken under Executive Order 13818. Now, that order builds upon and implements the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. That's a crucial U.S. law allowing the government to impose financial penalties and travel bans on individuals worldwide implicated in serious human rights abuse or significant corruption.
Global Magnitsky, right, I've heard of that.
It's a powerful tool designed to hold perpetrators accountable, promote human rights globally, regardless of their nationality or position.
So this is fascinating. Why target this specific high-ranking judge? What exactly are the allegations the U.S. is making against Justice de Moraes?
Well, the U.S. Treasury Department claims that Justice de Moraes has systematically used his judicial power to authorize what they term arbitrary pretrial detentions, and also to suppress fundamental freedom of expression within Brazil. The Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, issued a very strong statement. He asserted that de Moraes has taken it upon himself to be judge and jury in an unlawful witch hunt against United States and Brazilian citizens and companies.
Strong words.
Very. Bessent further accused de Moraes of being responsible for an oppressive campaign of censorship, arbitrary detentions that violate human rights, and politicized prosecutions. And these allegations explicitly include actions taken against the former Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, suggesting a pattern the U.S. views as politically motivated. So this isn't just about legal processes within Brazil, it's about principles like due process, rule of law, free speech, as viewed and championed by the U.S. government.
And there was action before this Treasury move.
Yes, this follows an earlier related step. On July 18, 2025, the United States Department of State revoked Justice de Moraes' visa and also the visas of his immediate family members. The State Department explicitly cited their complicity in, quote, aiding and abetting de Moraes' unlawful censorship campaign against United States persons on United States soil. This suggests the U.S. sees his actions as having reached beyond Brazil's borders, impacting Americans.
Okay, so what specifically is he accused of doing?
The Treasury highlighted a wide range of targets in this alleged campaign. Opposition politicians like Bolsonaro, numerous journalists, independent newspapers, even major U.S. social media platforms. He specifically alleged to have ordered U.S. social media companies to block or remove hundreds of accounts, often belonging to his critics or critics of the government, including accounts managed by U.S. persons.
So censorship is a key part.
A key part. But the accusations go further. Freezing assets of critics, revoking their passports, directing Brazil's federal police to raid critics' homes and seize belongings, and directing preventive detentions without clear charges of fundamental human rights concern. These are detailed, serious accusations painting a picture of significant judicial overreach, according to the U.S.
So, what does this mean in practical terms?
Right.
What's the immediate effect of these sanctions on Justice de Moraes, and what's the broader context here?
Well, the direct, immediate result is that all property and interests in property belonging to Justice de Moraes that are within the United States or held by any U.S. person or entity, they're now blocked. Frozen, essentially.
Meaning he can't access them.
Exactly. Cannot be accessed or transferred, and these blocked assets have to be reported to the Treasury. This blocking also extends to any company or entity that's owned 50% or more by de Moraes, directly or indirectly. For an individual, this can be incredibly disruptive. Cuts off financial access to the U.S. system business, personal funds, investments.
And this fits into a pattern of pressure.
It seems so. It gains context when we remember earlier pressure points. Former President Trump had previously threatened Brazil with a hefty 50% tariff on its products if the country didn't stop what Trump called an unjust, politically motivated case against former President Bolsonaro. And some reports even indicated that a new 40% tariff might have been imposed on certain Brazilian goods alongside these sanctions, suggesting an even broader punitive economic measure. So this action by the Treasury makes it unequivocally clear. The U.S. intends to hold accountable those who, in its view, threaten U.S. interests, interfere with the freedoms of its citizens, or engage in human rights abuses. The Global Magnitsky Act provides the tool. It also really shows how interconnected political actions and economic consequences can be internationally, where judicial decisions in one country can trigger significant financial fallout from another.
This is certainly a strong statement from the United States. It impacts financial assets, but also potentially significant diplomatic relations. In your view, what are the broader implications here for international law and global human rights?
That's a really important question when you connect this to the bigger picture. These sanctions against a sitting Supreme Court justice in another country, they raise profound, complex questions. Questions about the delicate balance between national sovereignty and universal international human rights standards.
It's a fine line.
It is. The United States is clearly asserting its right to act extraterritorially, meaning beyond its own borders against officials in other countries when it perceives serious human rights abuses or direct threats to its own citizens' freedoms, even when those actions happen entirely within another nation's legal system. Now, on one hand, you could see this as a powerful, maybe necessary tool for accountability, ensuring powerful individuals can't act with impunity against their own people or others.
But the other side?
The other side involves intense debates about what constitutes legitimate interference in sovereign affairs versus unacceptable overreach. For international law, it highlights this growing trend of applying domestic laws extraterritorially, especially in critical areas like human rights and anti-corruption. For human rights advocates, it sends a potent message. Individuals in power anywhere might face tangible consequences for actions the U.S. deems oppressive. So for you, our listener, this case really encourages critical thinking about the complexities of international governance. It challenges maybe easy assumptions about how universally accepted human rights principles are actually upheld or not across borders.
Okay, let's turn now to another major diplomatic development, one that has really captured global attention, the recognition of the state of Palestine. Canada has just announced a very significant shift in its policy on this.
Indeed. This is a dramatic, potentially game-changing policy shift for Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced on Wednesday, July 30th, that Canada plans to formally recognize the state of Palestine. They intend to do this at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly coming up in September 2025. This marks a really notable departure from Canada's previous, long-held position on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Why the change now?
Well, Prime Minister Carney stated quite unequivocally that this decision was deemed necessary to preserve any remaining hope of achieving a two-state solution, a concept that, he explicitly said, is being eroded before our eyes. He cited several critical reasons for this shift, including what he termed Israel's ongoing failure to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza amidst the conflict there, and also the continued expansion of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank and Israeli-annexed East Jerusalem.
So the traditional approach isn't working, in his view.
He argued that the traditional diplomatic approach is, quote, no longer tenable, suggesting a need for bolder international action. This shift reflects a growing international frustration, I think, with the stalled peace process and the dire humanitarian situation on the ground.
Is Canada alone in this, or are others moving in the same direction?
Canada's announcement positions it alongside other major European nations that have recently signaled similar intentions. It seems to be creating a wave of international recognition moves. France, for instance, had already stated its firm intention to formally recognize a Palestinian state during that same UN meeting in September. French President Emmanuel Macron notably called France the most powerful European nation to announce such a move, emphasizing its diplomatic weight, its potential to influence others.
What about the United Kingdom?
The UK also has plans to recognize a Palestinian state in September, but their Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has set specific, crucial conditions for this recognition.
Conditions? Like what?
He stated Israel must first reach a ceasefire in Gaza, also clearly state it will not annex the West Bank, and commit unequivocally to a peace process that explicitly aims for a two-state solution.
So the UK's move is conditional, offering Israel a path.
Exactly. It's a conditional approach, providing a distinct pathway, maybe an off-ramp for Israel. These increasingly coordinated announcements from key Western allies, they indicate a clear, significant shift in the diplomatic landscape around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a move towards greater international support for Palestinian statehood.
Now, what's fascinating here is how the world, especially key players, has reacted to these significant announcements.
Predictably, Israel has strongly, unequivocally condemned these moves, views them as deeply problematic. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that such recognition effectively rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism. He argued it would actively harm efforts to get a ceasefire in Gaza and secure a framework for releasing hostages. He directly criticized Prime Minister Starmer's conditional pledge too, arguing any recognition, even conditional, undermines Israel's leverage and empowers groups like Hamas.
So Israel sees it as validating Hamas.
That's their perspective, yes, that it's a premature concession that validates what they consider a terrorist organization and weakens their security position.
What about the United States?
United States President Donald Trump also weighed in. He dismissed President Macron's decision to recognize Palestine as simply pointless. But more directly and pointedly for Canada, Trump issued a clear warning via his social media platform. He stated that Canada backing statehood for Palestine will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with them.
Wow, linking it directly to trade.
Unequivocally, linking Canada's diplomatic stance on this highly sensitive geopolitical issue directly to those ongoing economic negotiations with its biggest trading partner. It shows a willingness by the U.S. to use significant economic leverage trade access to influence the political and foreign policy decisions of its allies. It really highlights this increasingly complex interplay between foreign policy and economic relations, where actions in one sphere can have profound, immediate repercussions in another. It forces nations to consider the economic fallout of their diplomatic positions.
This brings us right back to that trade question. How do these major diplomatic moves impact trade, specifically with the United States, especially with that August 1st deadline for a new trade deal looming over Canada?
That's exactly where the pressure really mounts. Prime Minister Carney had already confirmed earlier on Wednesday that those trade negotiations with the U.S., they hadn't been finalized. Despite being just 2 days away from Trump's critical August 1st deadline, Carney explicitly stated, "It is possible that negotiations may not conclude by the 1st of August, acknowledging the very real possibility of failure."
Which creates a very tense situation.
Extremely tense for Canada. Trump has explicitly threatened that crippling 35% tariff on Canadian goods not covered by CUSMA if a deal isn't reached by then. That's a huge economic threat, potentially hitting billions in Canadian exports. Now, with Canada's announcement on Palestine, this economic threat seems even more deeply intertwined with Canada's diplomatic posture. It suggests that, for the U.S., diplomatic alignment, particularly on highly sensitive issues like Palestine recognition, is now being directly linked to trade access and economic benefits. This significantly complicates Canada's position, forces them to weigh their foreign policy principles against potentially severe economic consequences.
So it's abundantly clear, international diplomacy and economic policy are deeply intertwined, with very significant consequences for national relationships, alliances. What does this mean for the future of these alliances and maybe even global stability?
What truly stands out to me here is the increasing, well, you could call it the weaponization of trade and economic leverage as a primary tool in foreign policy. That clear, direct link between Canada's stance on Palestine and the explicit threat of U.S. tariffs, it demonstrates that traditional diplomatic alliances are becoming far more transactional.
Less based on shared values, more on immediate interest.
It seems that way sometimes. Economic partnerships, once seen as stable foundations, are now being used more openly as bargaining chips to influence a country's geopolitical positions. So for you, our listener, this means understanding global politics isn't just about reading headlines. It's absolutely critical to recognize how deeply intertwined geopolitical strategies are with immediate economic interests. This dynamic implies a future where nations, even close allies, might face increasingly difficult choices. Choices between upholding their values or principles and ensuring their economic prosperity. This pressure could potentially lead to more unpredictable international relations, maybe a constant shifting of alliances, as countries navigate these complex, often conflicting pressures.
All right, let's end our deep dive today on a different note. Some genuinely hopeful news from the world of medical science. There's been significant, really exciting progress in the long, difficult quest for a vaccine against human immunodeficiency virus.
That's absolutely right. This recent study marks genuinely significant progress. Progress in the global effort to develop a safe, effective vaccine that can prevent human immunodeficiency virus infection. Now, existing antiretroviral drugs, they've dramatically transformed the lives of people living with human immunodeficiency virus, right? Allowing long, healthy lives. But a preventative vaccine is still urgently needed to truly end the global epidemic by stopping transmission in the first place.
And the breakthrough involves new technology.
Yes, the key breakthrough here lies in using messenger RNA technology, often called mRNA technology. It's the same innovative approach that was behind many of the highly successful COVID-19 vaccines.
Right, that familiar technology.
Exactly. And this technology, it dramatically speeds up vaccine development. It allows researchers to tackle even complex, highly changeable viruses like human immunodeficiency virus much more efficiently with greater precision. It really opens the door for potentially much faster advancements. Researchers from the renowned Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center tested a novel type of human immunodeficiency virus vaccine using a cutting-edge approach. They designed this vaccine specifically to display a very particular part of the human immunodeficiency virus called an envelope trimer on the surface of cells.
Okay, the envelope trimer. What is that exactly?
Think of it like the virus's specific key that it uses to unlock and enter human cells. By presenting just this specific vulnerable part of the virus to the immune system, the vaccine effectively teaches the body to recognize it and then to create highly targeted antibodies that can block the virus, prevent infection before it even starts.
So it targets the virus's entry mechanism.
Precisely. It's a highly strategic approach. It focuses the immune response on the most crucial, vulnerable part of the virus, hopefully making the body's defense much more effective.
So this is where it gets really interesting. What did the early trials actually show? Did it work?
Yeah.
And was it safe?
Well, in this early stage clinical trial, it was a phase 1 randomized controlled trial involved over 100 healthy human volunteers. The results were indeed quite encouraging. A remarkable 80%. 80% of the people who got this version of the vaccine produced antibodies capable of effectively blocking the human immunodeficiency virus in lab tests.
80% is high for an HIV vaccine candidate, isn't it?
It's a significant improvement compared to most earlier candidates, yes. They often struggle to trigger such strong, targeted, broadly neutralizing immune responses. So this high rate of antibody production suggests potent immune activation. Furthermore, the vaccine also generated strong memory responses, which means even long after vaccination, the body's immune system would retain a lasting memory of the virus, allowing it to respond quickly and effectively if exposed later. That's crucial for long-term protection.
Okay. That sounds very promising on the effectiveness front. What about safety?
In terms of safety, the investigational vaccines were generally reported as well tolerated overall, which is a very positive finding for a new vaccine. Most side effects were mild and transient, not severe, didn't last long. Similar to what many people experience with the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, fatigue, maybe some achiness, headache, chills, nausea, pain at the injection site. Common stuff. Usually gone a day or two.
I sense a but.
Well, there was one notable and unexpected side effect. Urticaria, commonly known as hives, that skin rash with itchy red welts. This reaction was seen in 7 participants. That's about 7% of the total volunteers. And that frequency is far higher than what's typically been reported with the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, so it definitely caught the researchers' attention.
7% is quite a bit higher. Did it last long?
For some individuals, unfortunately, these hives symptoms persisted for months, and in a few isolated cases, even for nearly 3 years after vaccination, indicating a potentially chronic issue for a small subset of people. It was also noted that participants who developed hive were more likely to have previously received the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine, though the exact reason, the mechanism behind these reactions, is currently unknown, needs more investigation.
Okay.
But despite the specific side effect, which is significant, needs attention. Researchers emphasize that mRNA technology still holds immense promise for vaccines, for therapeutics, across many diseases. This issue doesn't negate the overall potential of the technology itself.
So, pulling this all together, what does it mean for the global fight against human immunodeficiency virus? It sounds incredibly promising, yes, but clearly comes with its own challenges.
It's truly a complex picture, as you said. While these early results from the mRNA vaccine are genuinely encouraging, and the technology itself shows immense promise for speeding things up, those unexpected skin reactions, they underscore the critical need for continued, rigorous monitoring, further investigation. Future next-gen versions of the vaccine will need refinement, and much larger real-world studies are absolutely essential to understand the hive's mechanism fully and ensure broader safety for everyone.
And there are challenges beyond the science itself.
Yes, unfortunately. Broader progress in human immunodeficiency virus research faces significant external challenges that can hinder crucial development. For example, essential human immunodeficiency virus research work in South Africa has recently been stopped due to substantial United States funding cuts.
Funding cuts are stopping research.
Yes. Organizations like the Matrix Research Agreement, a crucial collaborative effort, 19 partners across multiple African countries and the U.S., they're experiencing what researchers call a devastating domino effect. Critical trials completely shut down. Participants who rely on these trials cut off from care, from new treatments, experience staff facing layoffs. This is especially concerning because South Africa is a global epicenter for human immunodeficiency virus research with invaluable infrastructure, experienced scientists.
That sounds incredibly damaging.
Researchers express profound concern. It takes decades to meticulously build scientific momentum, develop expertise, and, crucially, build trust within communities for trials. They lament that these sudden, overnight decisions to cut funding can effectively destroy careers and dismantle vital life-saving work. Now, despite this damage, some resilient African researchers are taking steps towards recovery, which highlights their unwavering dedication. But the impact is real. So, a complex but ultimately hopeful picture in this long, vital quest for a human immunodeficiency virus vaccine. Balancing that scientific promise with these significant real-world challenges. What's one key takeaway for you, our listener, about this groundbreaking research and its broader context?
What truly stands out to me is, first, the incredible potential of mRNA technology. It is genuinely accelerating vaccine development for tough diseases like human immunodeficiency virus at an unprecedented speed. That's hopeful. However, this story is also a stark, important reminder that scientific progress isn't just confined to the lab. Those unexpected side effects, though rare, highlight the absolutely rigorous safety scrutiny that's always needed in clinical trials. We need to ensure new breakthroughs are safe for everyone. And maybe even more profoundly, the broader context of those U.S. funding cuts impacting vital research in South Africa vividly illustrates how global health initiatives are deeply vulnerable to political and financial decisions made far from the research bench.
So for you, our listener, the key takeaway is that true progress in global public health requires more than just scientific genius and innovation. It also requires sustained commitment, robust, consistent funding, and a willingness to transparently address challenges to ensure that groundbreaking discoveries can actually reach the people who need them most, no matter where they live.
Okay, before we wrap up our deep dive today, let's quickly look at something that, well, had the potential to be truly catastrophic, but thankfully wasn't. There were widespread tsunami warnings lifted across the Pacific Rim today following an incredibly powerful event.
Yes, this was a genuinely significant event that thankfully didn't escalate into a major disaster for most regions. One of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded in modern history, an immense 8.8 magnitude quake, it rattled Russia's sparsely populated Far East.
8.8 magnitude, that's huge.
Immense. This incredibly powerful tremor immediately prompted widespread tsunami warnings across more than a dozen nations, stretching from Japan across to the United States all the way down to Ecuador and South America, caused huge alarm, triggered emergency protocols across the Pacific. Almost 2 million people in Japan were swiftly ordered to higher ground as a precaution. The Fukushima nuclear plant, famously hit by the 2011 tsunami, was temporarily evacuated as a safety measure. In Chile, with its long coastline, 1.4 million people were also ordered to high ground. It shows the sheer scale of the potential threat and how quickly warnings went out.
But the worst fears weren't realized.
Thankfully, no. What's truly fascinating is that despite those initial dire fears, predictions of storm surges maybe up to 4 meters high, a widespread catastrophe was largely avoided. The actual waves that arrived were much smaller than predicted. For example, only 60 centimeters in Chile, just over a meter in the Galapagos Islands, significantly less than feared. Tragically, the only reported fatality was one woman in Japan, died while driving her car off a cliff, apparently trying to escape the waves.
Where was the worst damage then?
Closer to the epicenter in Russia, specifically the port of Severodvinsk. The tsunami crashed through there, submerged a local fishing plant. There was distressing footage of buildings, debris being swept into the sea, and interestingly, the nearby Klychevskoye volcano also erupted shortly after the earthquake, a rare, maybe geologically related event. The United States Geological Survey noted this 8.8 quake was one of the 10 strongest tremors recorded globally since 1900. Emphasizing its extreme power, it was followed by dozens of aftershocks too, including a big 6.9.
So what's the takeaway from this near miss?
Well, for you, our listener, I think it serves as a powerful reminder of nature's raw, immense power, but also, thankfully, a testament to the effectiveness of modern tsunami warning systems and rapid evacuation protocols that really did avert a much larger human toll this time.
Thanks for listening to our daily newscast segment of the Deep Dive today. We truly hope you gained some valuable knowledge and improved your English along the way. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Deep Dive. We publish a new daily newscast episode every single day to help you stay informed and improve your English. Please comment below. Let us know what you understood, what you thought about today's news. Your feedback really helps us tailor these Deep Dives even better for you. We'll see you tomorrow for another daily newscast. It's definitely worth subscribing so you don't miss it.